And welcome back to the channel of nonsense. It's a bit windy and I don't like car journalists. I think they're full of nonsense. Go on Twitter and most of them will be telling you that we should all be driving around in 911 GT3s. And they don't understand the point of small SUVs such as this Renault Captur. And to an extent, I agree with them on the Renault Captur thing, not on the GT3 thing, because after all, this is sort of a small car, but it's also sort of trying to be a family car. So it seems quite compromised. They're usually more expensive than the hatchbacks upon which they're based, the Clio in this case. So yeah, I've been living with this Captur for a week, doing my usual family stuff, stopping tantrums, stopping bogies being wiped on things, that kind of stuff. And I kind of want to see, would this actually work as a family car? And I've been pleasantly surprised. Let's find out why. Not with the bogies, there were lots of bogies, that wasn't a surprise and it wasn't pleasant. Bah! So what is a Renault Captur? Well, you could say it's a £22,000 small SUV. It's basically a jacked up Clio. It's a competitor for the Ford Puma and the Peugeot 2008. This one is a plug-in hybrid, so it's a bit more expensive than £22,000. It's about 26 grand. This is actually an S edition E-Tech plug-in hybrid 160 auto. Do you care about that? I don't. But all you need to know, it's got 160 horsepower. It's the most powerful Captur ever. And there's also other engine options if you don't want a plug-in hybrid. There's a 145 horsepower self-charging, quote marks, hybrid, and a 140 horsepower mild hybrid, which I'm just going to start calling a petrol because they're so mild, it's just a petrol version. This is one of the smaller plug-in hybrid cars you can get, and it will still get you 31 miles officially of electric driving range. It's more like 20 in real life. It's got a 1.6 litre petrol engine coupled to a 49 kilowatt electric motor, so 160 horsepower in total. Quite a lot of torque from that electric motor, 205 newton meters, which makes this quite quick when you're driving it, and we'll get onto that. It's got a 9.8 kilowatt hour battery, which you can charge up to 3.7 kilowatt hours, which takes 4 hours 15 on a home socket. Are you bored of numbers yet? But anyway, has got all the classic compromises of a plug-in hybrid. The fuel tank is smaller than on the regular petrol. It's 39 litres as opposed to 45. But yeah, that's a Captur. It's 4.2 metres long, 1.6 metres high. They're all front-wheel drive, and the weight penalty for being a plug-in hybrid is quite a lot. It's 330 kilograms heavier than a regular petrol one. That's like 3 of me sitting on you. And you can't do that unless you click up in the top right and go to my OnlyFans and subscribe to that, and I will come and sit on you. But anyway, I need the money. It has, well, it's quite a stylish thing, isn't it? It has style, that's what I was about to say. I quite like these little chrome bits here, the swooping line. That is almost Peugeot-y for me. That's almost like 5008 territory. It's a bit grim in this grey, but you know, there are brighter colours available. And this version came out in 2019, and yeah, I quite like the look of it. It's got some neat little details, like it's got these little blue bits on the alloy wheels to signify it is electrified, and it unlocks and locks itself as you walk up to it with the key in your pocket. And in classic Renault style, that is the key. It's a flat bit of plastic. I'm actually growing to like these. I used to hate these, but actually they fit into your pocket nicer than big bulky normal keys. I just wish it was car colour, but hey, whatever. It'd be a grey key then, wouldn't it? The boot is worth talking about on this because it's quite small, because it's a plug-in hybrid. It's about 260 litres, and that is almost 140 litres less than the regular petrol version, because you do get a bit of storage under the boot floor, so it's not all gone, and you can keep your home charging cables there. But yeah, the boot is a lot smaller than on the regular petrol version. And I've got a big pram still because I've got a young kid. I've got a Bugaboo Chameleon 3, so it's quite a large pram, but that does just fit in there if you pack it quite carefully. But as a car for family road trips, this isn't it, at least not in hybrid form. Now I'll show you the back seats, keeping on the family theme, because I've forgotten to take my child seats out, but that's actually quite handy. So that is a seat for an 18-month-old. She should probably be facing forward now, but people on the internet would be angry if I did that. So there's not much room, but it does just about fit in there. That's my driving position. I'm 6'3", so that does fit. And around the other side, I've got the seat for the blonde Exocet, which is my 3.5-year-old, and she's chaos, but she's actually got a reasonable amount of room there. I'm going to introduce a new score for cars, which is called kicking the bejesus out of the back seats. This probably gets a 4 out of 10. It's quite kickable there. And you've got some little USB sockets down there and a 12 volt as well. So there's loads of charging flexibility in here. I'm going to rip one of these seats out, jump in and show you what an adult looks like in there. Oh yeah, fuel filler flap. That locks. The electric one does not lock. So yeah, the electric one's around there. Petrol is on the left. But anyway, back seats. Just before I do jump in, actually, I want to point out the ISOFIX points are hidden behind these zips, so you kind of have to go delving through all this this foamy cleft, frankly, to find your anchor points. But you know, I take car seats in and out every single week because I have different cars. If you own this, probably not a problem. You do it once and then you forget it. But anyway, gonna jump in and spin my camera around. He says, spin my camera around. Technology's not really working for me today. Actually, I fit in here okay. I've got loads of headroom. My knee room is made up by the fact that the seat curves inwards and it's quite soft and squidgy. That is the same as a Ford Puma. I was in the back of a Ford Puma last week and this is almost exactly the same size inside. I've got charging points, which I don't think the Puma had. And when you shut the door, it doesn't feel too claustrophobic either. The windows are reasonably big. Yeah, feels a little bit plasticky for your backseat passengers, but so what? They're your backseat passengers. Let's look up front and I'll show you the tech. The tech. Now, doesn't this make a change? Usually when I review press cars, they send you a super top spec one with all the bells and technological whistles, but this one actually has the entry-level sat-nav screen. It's about 7 inches. Higher trim level versions get a tall portrait one, which comes up here a bit and looks a bit posher, but frankly, this one is okay. It's got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but you've got to plug in to use it. The built-in sat-nav's all right. I've been using it. I haven't had too many qualms, and the default sound system in here is actually reasonably good as well. I'd certainly give it a 7 out of 10. It is solid and it's got pretty thumping bass. Now, what I do like is the big digital driver's display, because it shows you all the usual stuff, like where your power's going, whether it's coming from the motor or the petrol engine, but it also shows you the distance to the car in front in seconds, which I've not really seen on many cars before, so it's quite cool. So you can stick to that 2-second rule, and if you break it, you're a fool. But otherwise, steering wheel is lovely to hold. It's only got regular cruise control, this one, not radar cruise control. I should have pointed out that this car is £26,000, this specific one. It goes up to 30. I think I said it was 30 in the intro. This one isn't, it's 26, so it's actually a bit more affordable. And you've got physical climate controls with screens in the middle, nicked off the first generation Audi TT. And again, you've got USB charging points there and an aux in, which I haven't seen for a while, 12 volt, and a wireless charging mat. Now, one downside of the interior is that the gear knob does feel a bit cheap and plasticky, and it also doesn't line up with the P, R, N, D or B, so actually you just have to put it in the right gear by feel and by checking what it says up there on the dashboard. But otherwise, the cabin is quite nice. It's got a little bit of coloured mood lighting there, and all the plastics up front are reasonably soft. I really like these seats. These cloth seats look and feel quite posh. I'll stick a better shot of those in because I'm struggling a bit here. But otherwise, the cabin is good. Big door bins as well. Nice bit of storage. No storage above your head for sunglasses or anything, but the Ford Puma doesn't have that either. So a few other quick details about the interior. You can turn the lane keep assist off really easily with a single button press there, which I really quite like. There's the button to unlock the fuel filler flap that I was struggling with earlier. And there are some driving modes. So if you press EV down here, it puts it in a driving mode called Pure, which is obviously pure electric driving mode. So it'll try and keep you on the electric power all the time. Now, I haven't got that because the battery isn't charged enough, it's a bit flat. Sport mode gives you maximum power, shows a Captur on a racetrack. I'm never going to see that again in my life. And my sense is the default version, where it kind of just intelligently switches between petrol and hybrid power. And this is the e-save mode, which I'll talk about in the driving bit. But yeah, I have to say, I really like the interior of this Renault Captur. It's really impressed me. It's impressed those squawky birds outside as well. So anyway, let's go for a drive back from town to here. I've already filmed the driving bit, spoiler alert. Right, let's go for a drive in the Renault Captur, and I'm going to do a slightly different driving bit today because I know it's boring to watch, so I just want to keep it super short. Can you tell that I'm very prepared for this? Sorry, it's a little bit of Radio 1 because I am a young person. But anyway, you put your foot on the brake and you hit the start button down here. And because this has got a pretty flat battery, the hybrid battery, the engine fires into life straight away. If you've actually got some charge in your battery, the engine doesn't fire up and you can drive off in silence. Let me just move my parking permit. But anyway, back into D. There's that cheap feeling gear knob that doesn't quite line up again. And then you're away. And it is a very, very easy car to drive. And around town, it's mostly really good. And if you've got charging the battery, obviously you cruise around in silence so you can creep up on old people, and it's really quite fun. It's also quite brisk as well. I know 0 to 62 on this is 10.1 seconds on paper. The 250 newton meters of torque that you get from the electric motor means you've got an impressive amount of acceleration without the petrol engine kicking in loads and yowling. That said, on steep hills, you will get a little bit annoyed with the engine noise of this. It is quite loud when it needs to really help the electric motor out. And yeah, I would say that's one of the big drawbacks of this, is the engine can get noisy under heavy load. And also, it doesn't really seamlessly shift between electric power and petrol power. There's sometimes just, you feel it's fighting with itself a little bit. Go on, Mr. Golf R Estate, you've got a cool car, I don't judge you. But around town, really good visibility. I've got these little windows down here so I can see out nice and easily. Out of the front at junctions, got a bit South African, and I've got rear quarter lights as well. So actually the view over your shoulder is reasonably good. So yeah, a real doddle to drive around town, and you do sit higher up than in something like a Ford Cougar, which is barely an SUV. That is quite low down. I said Cougar, I meant Puma. The Ford Puma, the rival for this car, does sit quite low. It's almost Fiesta-ish. But this, you do actually look over other cars, which is kind of why you buy a small SUV, really, isn't it? That's why I would buy one. Other bits and pieces to talk about. The way the hybrid motors are set up in this is quite complicated. There are two electric motors. There is one which acts as a starter generator on the engine, like with a mild hybrid, and that kind of really just gets the engine going and helps a little bit around town. Then you've got a second motor, which is the drive motor, the more powerful one, and that actually drives you when you're in electric mode. And there's something about having no clutches between that and the petrol engine, which makes it all very clever, and it basically means Renault can say it's inspired by the Formula One team. I don't know anything about Renault's Formula One team. I'm not a Formula One fan, other than there's that nice man Cyril on Drive to Survive, but he probably got fired for being rubbish and not wearing enough yellow. But anyway, I'm not actually going to go on to dual carriageways because I'm slightly lacking time, but you are absolutely just a piece of knob cheese for pulling out me. But yeah, on motorway speeds, dual carriageways does get a little bit noisy in here, and it's all from the mirror. On this side, there's something around here, I don't know if it's this window joint here, it really makes you feel like your window's open a bit, and I'm keep putting the windows up and I'm like, oh, why have I left it open? But it's shut. So yeah, don't know if it's specific to this car, it could be a little seal problem, but go and test drive one and tell me in the comments if you found this bit of the car noisy. It doesn't really do it on the passenger side, so I think it's probably just a problem with this particular car. Other thing I need to talk about in the driving is the MPG. Yeah, you need to keep this car charged to get decent MPG. That's fairly obvious, but lots of people go and buy plug-in hybrids because they get cheap benefit in kind company car tax, and then they don't charge the bloody thing up and then wonder why they don't get good MPG. As I said earlier, all the electric stuff in this car weighs quite a lot, 330 kilos. That's carrying a lot of extra ballast around, and the MPG I've been getting doing sensible driving around town on an empty battery is 40 MPG. That's not very efficient at all. So yeah, if you can't charge the battery up in your plug-in hybrid Captur, just buy the pure petrol one, because I can guarantee you'll get better MPG. Right, country road time. We can talk about what I quite like about this car, and that is that it handles quite nicely. It's not really like mega fun, but it just grips and goes, and the steering's quite fast, and combined with that torque from the electric motor, it's actually reasonably fun to drive fast down a twisty road. One thing that you'll now see though is the downside of that weight is it jiggles. Yeah, it's another jiggly partly electric car. Again, it's to do with the weight of the batteries overwhelming the suspension a bit, so it doesn't really get crashy, but it does feel a bit uncomfortable on broken, bumpy country roads. And that's kind of pretty much it in a nutshell. It feels quicker than you might expect, especially in the mid-range from 40 to 60 miles an hour. I would almost say this feels brisk. And it's just a joy to drive. It's very easy to drive. I think for me though, I would just get the regular petrol one. But yeah, we should also talk, finally, one last thing, about the fact it has a B mode. So on the gear knob, you can flick it all the way back into B, and then the car will stop if you lift off the accelerator. Like this. Look, I've stopped. Pretty much. That is the one pedal driving mode. So you can just drive it with your foot on the accelerator and lift off when you want to slow down. So that's not usually a thing on plug-in hybrids. That's usually only on full electric cars, but it's quite satisfying. Obviously that braking is coming from the motor, so you're putting energy back into your battery, which you can see down here. One final thing is that if you go into the menus and put it in what they call it eSave. eSave sounds like an online supermarket, but actually it just uses the petrol engine to charge the battery, and it runs the engine at, I don't know what the revs are, but quite high revs all the time to charge the battery, and it works quite quickly. I had it in that mode for 15 minutes earlier on a school run, and it gave me an extra 10 miles on the battery, which is quite good. So if you are in a fix and you know you're going into town and you want some pure electric driving, you can whack it in that mode, and obviously it does harm your MPG. It took it down to 38 miles per gallon for me while doing that. But yeah, the Captur, really like it as a thing to drive. I would rather just have the pure petrol version or the mild hybrid version, and yeah, I really like it. Anyway, let's do a full outro next. So in conclusion, what do I think of the Renault Captur, having lived with it for a whole week doing family stuff? Well, I really like it. I'd give it 4.5 stars out of 5, and it's become my new favourite small family SUV. I think it's better than a Ford Puma because its interior feels nicer. The Puma is more interesting to drive, but I don't really care in a family car. Also, it's quite affordable for a plug-in hybrid if you get an entry-level-ish trim version. It could be about 26 grand for a plug-in hybrid. Obviously, some of the top-spec ones are 30, which I find too expensive for a car this size, but you've got the choice. I also like the fact that it's just quite relaxing. Sure, the hybrid engine thing can make a bit of a racket at times, but by and large it's okay, and the ride is a bit jiggly in places, but generally it's okay. It's just an easy car to live with. Yeah, I like it. I would get a petrol one with the bigger boot, frankly, and it would be a bit cheaper as well, unless you need the tax thing for having a plug-in hybrid. I'll just get a petrol one. But yeah, I really like it. It feels posh inside. If you want a small SUV and you get it, unlike most car journalists, go and buy a Captur. Anyway, hopefully this was helpful. If it was, please hit like. Do subscribe to the channel because I've got plenty of sensible car reviews coming up, possibly including 911 GT3 one, when I say it's probably better than a Renault Captur, but ignore that, whatever. And go down to the comments and leave me the French word for a clutch pack, because this hasn't got one. Goodbye.